Right. Good morning, distinguished committee members, Dr. Chappelle, Dr. Gilbert, Dr. Stone, Dr. Chukarev, and Dr. Sonsat-Hickelheimer, and guests. I'm Andrias, a PhD candidate in applied linguistics and technology and human-computer interaction, and I'm honored to present my dissertation titled An Argument-Based Validity Study of the Assessment of Speaking Proficiency with AI Interlocutor and Rater, or ASPIRE. Here is the roadmap of this presentation. I'll begin with the introduction by outlining the study's motivation. Then I will move to the literature review covering argument-based validity, spoken dialogue system, and digital human avatar technologies, automated speaking evaluators, bias, and the research questions. I'll present the research methods from the research design to the pilot study as well. Next, I present the results for the 10 research questions. Finally, I would also present the findings and discussion, and I welcome your questions at the end. The real world problem that motivated this study takes place in an applied setting, particularly an English test preparation course in Indonesia. The traditional speaking post-test design includes one tutor who acts as the speaking interlocutor as well as rater, who provides feedback to 7 students, all within 120 minutes. That breaks down to roughly 17 minutes per student. However, the critical issue raised here is unreliable scoring. When one person serves as both the interlocutor and rater under severe time pressure, consistency and fairness become serious concerns. Such inconsistencies undermine the reliability of the rating and raise concerns about fairness for all test takers. This problem motivated me to conduct the study of designing a more reliable assessment system using emerging AI technologies. To situate my work, let me briefly review the current landscape of speaking assessments. Broadly, several configurations exist depending on the nature of the test, whether individual, paired, or group-based. The trend is currently shifting from traditional methods toward more technology-facilitated speaking assessments. Research on tests such as IELTS and TOEFL IBT, as well as university-specific tests like the EPTOC and OACT, and increasingly AI-powered alternatives such as Pearson Fersen, the Duolingo English Test, and Speech Ace has begun to explore how technology can help improve assessment quality. The test I designed for this study, called ASPIRE, attempts to introduce a hybrid method speaking assessment that integrates both human and AI interlocutor as well as raters. That said, this study attempts to address several existing research gaps. First, there's a lack of direct comparisons between spoken dialect systems and human interlocutors in terms of usability and influence on score. Direct rating comparison is also another point that we need to address through this research. And thirdly, rubric equivalence across different assessment systems is underexplored. Fourth, bias in human AI hybrid testing context remains insufficiently examined. Lastly, there is very limited research involving Indonesian-speaking test raters, especially in non-formal institution setting. ASPIRE is proposed to directly address these gaps. As the central construct of this study, speaking proficiency is defined as the linguistic abilities required to communicate effectively in real time. It encompasses 4 key dimensions: vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation, and fluency and coherence under time pressure. This study is grounded in argument-based validity. According to Dr. Chappelle in 2021, argument-based validity encompasses a research program that consists of activities whose findings need to be integrated into a logical conclusion about the validity of test score interpretations for particular uses. The framework generally consists of 7 inferences: domain analysis, evaluation, generalization, explanation, extrapolation, utilization, and consequence. For this study, I focus particularly on 3 inferences. First, evaluation. The warrant is that observed performance on ASPIRE tasks is evaluated to provide observed scores reflective of targeted speaking abilities as defined by the rubric. Second, generalization. The warrant is that students' observed scores provide stable estimates of their expected performance across parallel forms and raters. And third, utilization. The warrant is that the ASPIRE system, particularly the DSA interlocutor, is usable and can support decision-making in the language assessment context. The first technological feature in my study is the implementation of digital human avatars, or DSAs. Now I'd like to present the difference between the SDSs and DSAs. SDSS, or spoken dialogue systems, primarily rely on audio-only spoken language exchange. They tend to feel robotic or unnatural. They are built on intent-based frameworks like Olympus and are often pre-programmed and rigid. In language assessment, they have been used for reliability and standardization, particularly for fluency and grammar. DSAs, by contrast, integrate both audio and visual features, mimicking physical human presence through facial expressions and gestures. They are powered by large language models, enabling AI-generated prompts and more dynamic knowledge bases. In assessment context, DSAs maximize multimodal expressiveness. This Aspire study specifically examines whether this improved engagement translates to effectively evaluate learner speaking proficiency through reliable scoring. To give you a clearer picture about DSA, what you see on the screen here is Silas, the DSA used in this study. Although I screen recorded this to present to you, in the actual study, we can actually communicate with it in real time, just like how we speak to a normal human being. Sorry, the audio doesn't come up. It's supposed to be, there's an audio there. All right, moving on. This study employs two automated speaking evaluators, which I will compare directly. First, SpeechRadar, a non-LLM system that uses feature-based machine learning. It applies the TOEFL IBT speaking rubric, so it is designed to measure a speaking construct that is different from IELTS or the one selected for this Aspire system. There are three large dimensions included in the scoring: delivery, language use, and topic development. To produce 5,250 scores, it costs approximately $400 from a third-party provider. Second, Google Gemini 2.0 Flash, an LLM-based system using end-to-end neural models. It applies the IELTS speaking rubric. It covers fluency and coherence, lexical resource, grammar, and pronunciation. The cost for the same volume of scores is dramatically lower, only $52. This cost and technology difference raises several questions about equivalence that we will discuss later at the end of this presentation. Obtaining reliable scores requires addressing factors that lead to measurement error. Therefore, another central concern in the study is bias, which I define as a consistent distortion where certain outcomes are systematically favored. This concept is manifested in rater severity or leniency, misuse of the rating scale, and general rating inconsistency. In speaking assessment, there are two most common sources of bias, including interviewer bias, whether from human or AI interviewers, and rater bias, from human raters or AI raters. Understanding and mitigating these biases is essential for establishing the reliability of score assignment of any assessment system. This study is designed to address 10 research questions organized under 3 inferences. Under evaluation inference, I examined the appropriateness of raters training, raters understanding and adherence to the rubric, transparency of automated scoring, alignment of human and automated rater groupings, and scoring agreement levels. Under generalization inference, I investigate whether test taker facet is the primary source of score variance, whether the dependability coefficient meets the threshold of 0.7, and whether rating severity is equivalent across human and AI interlocutors and raters. Under utilization inference, I ask whether the system achieves high usability, specifically an SUS score above 68, whether perceived usability influences speaking scores. This study employs a sequential mixed method design. If this picture is not very clear, you can see the handout that you received at the beginning of this presentation. In the first phase, I completed the quantitative part of this study, including analyzing the participant scores and the responses on the system usability scale of the digital human avatar. In the second phase, the qualitative part of the study was completed to obtain information from the human rater in regards to research questions 1 and 2 about the appropriateness of rater training and understanding, as well as adherence to the scoring rubric used in Aspire. Prior to conducting the actual data collection and analysis, I completed a pilot study with 7 participants, 4 human raters, and 2 automated speaking evaluators. I obtained 210 data points consisting of 42 holistic scores and 168 analytic scores on fluency and coherence, vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation. I analyzed the scores using many-facet RASH measurement, by previously checking three assumptions, and one of the assumptions was not met, namely local independence. But having two assumptions still allowed me to run the rash analysis. So this is the result of the pilot study. The first column maps the speaking scores of the 7 participants, participant A to participant G. They are clustered tightly around the 0 logit mark. It suggests that this group has a very similar level of speaking proficiency relative to the difficulty of the assessment. Next, talking about task difficulty. Most tasks are grouped together, but task 1, question 3 is positioned notably lower than the rest. It suggests the task was the easiest task for the examinees to perform well on. Next, based on the third column, there is a clear divide here. The Gemini Aspire Rater and Speech Rater are positioned higher than the 4 human raters, which indicates that the AI raters are being harsher. It is essentially harder for a student to get a high score from the AI than from human raters 1, 2, 3, or 4. Lastly, regarding the overall criteria, it is at the top of the dimension column, while lexical resource is toward the bottom. It means it was more difficult for examinees to receive a high score for their overall performance than it was for their vocabulary usage. The pilot data, as shown here, allowed me to verify the measurement model before scaling up to the full study. From this Bhattacharya coefficient diagram, we can see how different 4 human raters marked by the blue area and the 2 computer raters as seen in the red area perform their ratings. The amount of overlap between the 2 probability distributions shares approximately 83.1% of the area. Several important conclusions were drawn from the pilot. First, a rater configuration of 3 raters, 1 human rater, speech rater, and Google Gemini, was confirmed as appropriate though the stringency of the speech rater was noted. Second, construct misalignment was observed between the IELTS 4-dimension rubric and the speech rater 12-dimension analysis. Third, potential interlocutor bias from the DSA was identified as a potential concern to monitor. And fourth, the usability ceiling effect of 100 suggested I needed a larger sample. These conclusions later were considered in designing the main study design. For the actual data collection, the number of participants included were 50 Indonesian learners, randomly selected and invited to participate. They were students from a test preparation course. In this actual study, 1 Indonesian English course tutor was invited as the human rater, and 2 automated speaking evaluators remained to be used in the actual study, Speech Rater and Google Gemini. Moving on to the research materials, there were the Aspire system itself, and the study used the latest version of the IELTS speaking rubric. The rater training and norming protocols, semi-structured interview questions, and the system usability scale were also prepared and administered. As the context of the study was speaking test preparation, as a comparison, I would now describe how the institution conducted speaking assessment that marked the end of the speaking course. The traditional test followed the IELTS speaking simulation format, lasting 15 minutes. 1 student interacted with 1 human tutor. The test had 3 parts, part 1, part 2, and part 3. Scoring used the IELTS rubric across 4 dimensions, fluency, coherence, until pronunciation, with the scores ranging from 1 to 9 in half-point increments. In contrast to administering the speaking test using 1 human examiner, the Aspire test was designed to enable direct comparison, AI interlocutor, and rater components. The total duration of the test was 10 minutes. In part 1, the student interacted with the human interlocutor for 3 minutes across 3 questions. In parts 2 and 3, the student interacted with the digital human avatar, 6 minutes in total, with 3 questions in part 2 and 1 discussion question in part 3. The scoring rubric mirrored the IELTS format to ensure comparability. The administration of Aspire was extensive, with 50 participants, 3 raters, 35 holistic and analytic scores per participant. The total dataset comprised 5,250 scores. This volume of data allows robust statistical analysis and strengthens the generalizability of my findings. To measure usability, I used the System Usability Scale developed by Brooke in 1986. This is a well-established 10-item questionnaire with responses on a 5-point Likert scale from strongly disagree to strongly agree. Items cover different themes as shown on the screen, and a score of above 68 is typically considered above average or good usability. For phase 2, the qualitative part, To complement the quantitative data, I conducted semi-structured interviews organized around 5 teams. Radio training and comfort, opinions about using a DSA as an interlocutor, human rating performance through retrospective analysis, and rating performance of the automated speaking evaluators. Now, are we ready for the results of the study? Moving to the results section, I'll begin with the descriptive statistics of the holistic scores. This provides the foundation for the inferential analysis that follow. One interesting finding is that speech rater consistently provided the lowest score of all the raters. A similar pattern can also be identified from the descriptive statistics for the analytic scores across the 4 dimensions, where speech rater provided a score more than 1 point less than the other raters, as seen from the mean scores and standard deviation values. Before running the statistical analysis, I verified the statistical assumptions. Normality was not supported, which guided my choice of non-parametric of more robust statistical options were appropriate. Unidimensionality was supported, confirming that the test measures a single underlying construct, which is speaking proficiency as intended. Also, the assumption regarding local independence was supported, indicating that responses to different items are not influenced by each other once the underlying proficiency is accounted for. Research question 1 asks, do human raters report that the training was appropriate, the rating tasks were clear, and that they felt confident in assessing aspire test takers? The findings, supported by interview data, indicate that the human rater found the training appropriate and felt confident with their rating. This assumption is stated to be supported. Research question 2 asks, do human raters' retrospective reports indicate consistent adherence to the prescribed scoring rubric? The human rater reported consistent adherence to the rubric in their decision-making processes. This assumption is also supported. Research question 3 asks, do the automated scoring providers provide documentation of their scoring processes? For speech rater, documentation is available through established channels. For Gemini, I developed Python scripts to interface with the API and documented the prompt engineering process. The transparency assumption is supported. Here you can see the snapshots of the Gemini rater Python scripts to ensure the transparency and replicability of the LLM-based scoring process. Research question 4 asks, do the proficiency groupings generated by human raters, speech rater, and Gemini show statistically significant similarity? The overall CFR distribution agreement across 50 participants by the 3 raters shows some disagreements between the human and automated scoring systems. While the human rater and Gemini agreed that more than 70% of the participants were categorized as independent learners or B-level, speech rater found that more than 80% of the participants were classified in the A-level speaking proficiency, which is a lower category. To dig deeper, I used Bhattacharya coefficient analysis to further examine this to see if the probability distributions will likely be similar or different. These coefficients are usually used for measuring the probability distribution trends of machine learning programs. The results show strong agreement between human and Gemini raters, but weaker agreement involving speech rater. This assumption can be said as partially supported, and for the overall holistic scores, human Gemini agreement is very high at 0.920, while human speech rater is 0.766, and Gemini speech rater is 0.788. This suggests that while holistic agreement is acceptable, the analytic alignment between human rater and speech rater is a little problematic. The overlapping histograms visually represent these rating distributions. You can see the divergence in how the 3 raters distribute scores across the 4 components. The blue and the green area represent the Gemini and human rater that are similar in shape, while the orange area is the speech rater, which is a bit different from the others. Research question 5 asks, do the 3 raters achieve adequate exact and adjacent agreement? The data show the percentage of cases with exact agreement and within 1 point difference. The results indicate that while adjacent agreement is reasonable, exact agreement remains a challenge, particularly between human and speech rater ratings. This assumption investigated through this research is partially supported. Moving to the last inference of the study, the generalization inference, research question 6 asks, does the generalizability study demonstrate that the largest portion of score variance is attributable to the test taker facet? The two study results show that 41.7% of variance belongs to the participant variable. This is substantial and indicates that the test is primarily measuring differences between test takers rather than other facets. This assumption is supported. Research question 7 asks, does the decision study indicate that the current test and reader setup achieves a dependability coefficient of at least 0.7? With the current setup of 7 tests and 3 readers, reliability coefficients are strong. Nonetheless, with the optimal setup of 8 tests and 3 readers, they improve further. All configurations exceed the 0.7 threshold. This assumption is partially supported. For the current setup, the pronunciation is the only dimension that is 0.63, which didn't achieve the threshold. While if we add one more task, every dimension covers coefficient above 0.7. This is question 8 asks, does the manifested REST analysis show equivalent radar severity across tests? The analysis indicates that radar severity remains equivalent and stable across the various tests of the Aspire assessment. Speech radar exhibits noisy scoring patterns with more variation than the REST model expects, placing it near the underfit range. The human radar shows a tendency toward overfitting due to high consistency and alignment with the rubric. Similarly, Gemini demonstrates significant overfitting, suggesting it follows a rigid deterministic pattern because the temperature was set into 0. Moving to the utilization inference, this is question 9 asks, does the Aspire DSA achieve a high level of usability? The SUS result shows that DSA received an excellent usability of 96.65, far exceeding the 68 threshold. This assumption is strongly supported. Research question 10 asks, does perceived usability significantly correlate with or influence candidates' final speaking scores? The finding is clear. Perceived usability did not significantly influence test performance. The Pearson correlation was 0.21 with the p-value of 0.148, which is a weak non-significant association. Linear regression showed R-square of 0.04, meaning usability explains only 4% of the score variance. There was also a ceiling effect in the high SUS cluster. We cannot tell the difference between a student who is good, very good, and excellent or exceptional because all hit the ceiling effect, the ceiling of the test. This is actually an important finding. High usability does not artificially inflate scores. In other words, the interlocutor bias from the DSA is not identified. Let me now summarize the findings by inference. For the evaluation inference, scores on Aspire accurately summarize relevant performance. 3 of 5 assumptions are fully supported. Rater training appropriateness, rubric adherence, and scoring transparency are all supported. However, alignment of groupings and scoring agreement levels are only partially supported, primarily due to the speech rater divergence. For the generalization inference, expected scores reflect performance consistency across parallel forms and raters. 2 of the 3 assumptions are supported. The test taker facet is primary variance source, and the dependability coefficient are both supported. However, equivalence of rating severity across human and AI interlocutors and rater is not supported, again pointing to the speech rater alignment issue. For the utilization inference, the Aspire system is usable and supports decision making. The high usability score is strongly supported. Also, based on the fact that there is no evidence of the interlocutor bias, which as I mentioned is actually favorable for this research, it suggests no score inflation from the positive user experience with the interlocutor. Approaching the end of my presentation, these are some discussion points that this study contributes to. First, the feasibility of the Aspire system. Having 8 raters and 3 raters, 8 tests and 3 raters, which is the addition of task 4, discussion with the human interlocutor, would be promising. Evaluation of the validity argument. Evidence across 3 inferences shows that this hybrid testing system can effectively measure speaking proficiency with no interference bias, but some rater bias from speech rater. But why, right? This is the unexpected findings and construct misalignment. So speech radar was initially chosen for its practicality because it's one of the best automated speaking evaluators available now. But the study found it fundamentally misaligned with the Aspire speaking proficiency construct. In other words, we cannot just choose one automated speaking radar to choose speaking tests that have different constructs. They are measuring different things. Comparison with prior research, combining AI stability with human judgment for measuring speaking proficiency, the study shows that LLM-based systems like Gemini outperform traditional automated speaking evaluator, such as SpeechReader, and much more cost efficient, 8 times more efficient. Theoretical and practical implications. Theoretically, the study extends the argument-based validity framework by showing that AI-mediated interaction can meaningfully contribute to speaking assessment in comparison to human-human interaction. Practicality. Aspire holds a strong potential for reliable scoring through a human AI rating system in comparison to a human-only rating design. Some limitations of the study are to be addressed. The ceiling effect, especially in the utilization inference, misfit in pronunciation scoring, which is not yet effective with the seven tests and 3 raters. My population is not normal. We have non-normal distribution sampling. Stratified sampling would be better, or other options. Cross-sectional analysis instead of longitudinal would also give more data. So some recommendations for future research. Automated speaking evaluator development needs to focus on pronunciation scoring using advanced acoustic models such as Whisper or omnilingual automated speech recognition. Examine longitudinal prospect effects of test-oriented learning, and add a discussion with the human test, and have broader populations. Thank you, committee members and attendees, for your attention and for the opportunity to present my research. I would now welcome your questions and comments. Someone raised their hand.
So do we have questions from our online participants or our visiting participants? Okay.
I have one question.
Oh,
Yeah,
someone
okay.
first.
My question is more from the practitioner's perspective.
One of the what, sorry?
Practitioners,
Sorry, yes.
teachers' perspective. But first of all, let me say excellent work. This was really impressive and truly a great contribution. I can already see how I can implement this in practice, but I just want to hear your opinion. What would be your advice for practitioners? Can we use this in the classroom, let's say, to maybe give the students to guide the students to self-evaluate, or maybe use this as a diagnostic at the beginning of a speaking course or something like that? What would be, and how easy or difficult it is to create this on our own?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the question. Excellent question. So currently, one of the most popular tests available nowadays is Speech Ace, that integrates like what I did in my study, which is having an STS interlocutor and an automated speaking evaluator. That's one possibility for you to assign perhaps your students to have independent speaking practices, and then they can also monitor their progresses there. And with my study, that's Speech Ace, but with my study for Aspire, first of all, as teachers, we need to be careful in determining what automated speaking evaluator we need to choose. We need to make sure that the constructs are actually designed, or the evaluators are actually designed for that construct we intend to measure. And I think having that as alternative to human, teacher student speaking practice and teacher oriented feedback or scoring would be a good alternative in this case. And of course, if we have longitudinal research in your class, that would be a wonderful formative assessment instead of putting it at the end. So I would definitely, as a teacher myself, I would consider this as an extra activity outside of the classroom practices. That's it.
Yes, thank you. It sounds very useful. I'd like to talk more about it later.
Sure, yeah, internal.
Thank you.
Right. Other questions, perhaps? Yeah. Thank you for the comments. I would like to invite all participants online, perhaps, to ask questions. Mm, Sure.
Our online participants are very quiet today.
How many do we have? How many are there? 25. Yeah. Any questions that I can try to answer probably?
I'll just ask a general question that probably some people are thinking of, and that's just to go back to thinking about how you chose which automated rating tools to try out in this study.
Thank you. Yeah, so first of all, I contacted several vendors or providers. I contacted SpeechAce. Basically, they are very open, but they were willing to, or they're asking me to provide 10,000 data points, which I couldn't cover. And then I contacted Mr. John Healy, the owner of the My Speaking Score, and because it uses speech reader, and we know that speech reader is used by TOEFL IBT for decades to measure students' proficiency. So this is one of the strongest tools that we have in the language assessment. So I contacted him, and then we did some negotiation, and then I got a good price for this. This is what I have for my grant, and then he gave me some discounts. And again, $400 for 5,250 scores may not be applicable to others because in general they will get more expensive rate in this case. Yeah, yeah. But my main concern is to find one rater that is popular, that is useful, that is most effective in the world of language assessment, and TOEFL IPT as one of the main players in language assessment, especially with the open, well-documented research. I think Speech Reader is the biggest contender, the strongest contender that I can reach out to. Yeah.
And then Gemini too, right?
Gemini
I mean, was that the only obvious one, or did you shop around
Thank you.
the AI speech
Yeah,
rating?
thank you for the question. I did not try ChatGPT, which is one of the biggest players. I use Gemini because one, they have a promo, which is $300 free for the new developers. And so I got that $300 kind of allowance, and then I used up only $52 with this amount. So I think that's a good promotion for Google Gemini too. And Google Gemini 2.0 is actually not continuing in the future. It stops, but for at that moment I could only have that version because there's one of the most stable version of Gemini Flash. Yeah, yeah. Does it answer your question, ma'am?
Yeah, good. Yeah, it answered the question everybody had. So.
Yeah, so I would also suggest not to just upload all students' speaking performances to LLMs and ask them to score. That would be very risky, and I think that would be not responsible. We have some scripts, and I can share the script, and we can use Google Gemini for that. We can use Google Colab that I learned from Dr. Albini's class. We can also use Google Cloud. I use Google Cloud, and we can just upload the script, and we can provide several parameters so that the LLM follow what we want. Especially setting the temperature into 0 is one crucial point so that the hallucination is put into minimum.
Do you get to put in the tasks, like you came up with your own tasks to guide the students, right?
Yeah, the speaking tests themselves are selected from the IELTS speaking questions.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's how.
yeah. I can definitely share the scripts to the audience.
Maybe another general question others might be wondering as well. So did you create your avatars yourself, the stylus and all other options, beautiful things on live avatar through HeyGen? How did that work? Is it something you created by using those two separately?
Yeah, thank you for the question. It is an off-the-shelf material that is available online. Particularly, there is no specific reason why I chose Silas, but he looks professional and he looks pretty common speaking rater. And then there's a language learning option there. And I think that's the only reason I selected that. We tried DID that Dr. Gibler also advised. We paid for that, but the performance was not as good as HeyGen, to be honest. And this one is free for 10 minutes, and that was quite enough for conducting the speaking test per person. Yeah.
Have any of our online people come up with a question yet?
Do you have any questions from the online participants? There you go.
I have a question.
Question, Inian?
That was a great presentation. I couldn't, video is not available right now, so,
Do you
okay.
want to type the question or?
No. I can speak
Yeah.
my answer, my question. So, in addition to Sinam's question about HeyGen API, so you use HeyGen API to do this, to construct this speech interlocutor, right?
Yes.
And I had a question about, did you have enough control over the conversation with HeyGen? Like the questions the interviewer is asking. And I just wanted to hear more about your experience with standardization of the conversation using HeyGen API.
Thank you so much for the question, Inyan. In our PSLT conference, Edna Lima and her partner did a workshop on prompt engineering, and I used that to make the prompt. Let me show you the prompt that was pretty simple. So this prompt was directly spoken to the HeyGen. So for example, hi, my name is Andrias. I want to practice speaking with you. So this is the purpose element of this prompt engineering. Please ask me 3 short questions, interview questions, and allow me to answer each question for 1 minute. And I also need 1 discussion question. So this is what they, Edna, Lima, and Wallace mentioned by task 1 and task 2. Allow me to discuss the topic for 2 minutes. I want to talk about neighbors or family occasions. This is the context of it. Yeah, I think they are also developing the prompt engineering points. But I think we need to contact them again. But they already developed more parameters to limit the AI to speak as what we want. But before I assigned this to the students, I tried them myself about 10 times. And when they took the test, when all the participants took the test, I was there with them. I listened to them. And if you notice that the SUS score is not 100, it is 96.65 because there are 2 or 3 participants chose 0.3 instead of 0.5 for the easiness or the alignment, I think. And it was because DSA hallucinated by asking technology, which was not the 2 topics asked here. So I found out that we need to wait for the DSA for completing the statements. Then we prompted the DSA to ask questions and things like that. But give them time to finish the questions first. Then perhaps the computer, the back end part of the TSA can move forward better in this case. Does it answer your question, Inyan?
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Inyan. Any other questions from the participants, probably?
We should probably dismiss our participants, our extra people at this point so that the committee can ask some additional questions.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate that. You can move it.